Hi, today, so my name is Kate, I'm the founder of femLENS, Ekaterina Savelyeва. We're starting a new series of live conversations. In August, femLENS will be 5 years old since our first workshop, and so we're starting a series of conversations about photography and anything photography related. Today we have a guest who will hopefully be joining us soon. And we will be talking about photo books, as femLENS is creating a series of photo books. Well, actually, we've created a series of magazines in the past, but now we're creating a photo book to document the 5 years of the photographs that our workshop participants have taken. And so we would like to start the series of conversations with a conversation about the value of photo books, the printed, actual physical copies of them. So we're just waiting for our participant. Let's see if we can start. Please feel free to ask any questions. I'm just going to message the other participant. Yeah, so feel free to write any questions. We'll be talking about photography books today, but in general we'll be having conversations about photography related subjects. So we're just waiting for our guest. Who should be joining in a minute? Okay, so our guest has joined, but not... How do we make this? Okay. There we go. Go live. Got it now.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I'm having such a technical nightmare tonight.
This is my first time, so I have no idea what I'm doing either.
Oh, it's great. It's
Yeah.
great.
So my name is Kate, or the longer version is Ekaterina Savelyeva. I'm the founder of femLENS. I think we've spoken. But thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, pleasure. Good evening.
And good evening. So it's going to be a very short conversation. As I said, we'd love to find out why you're so into reviewing photo books and what do you think is the value of them today?
Yeah. Where do you want to start, really?
Well, when was the first book that you reviewed online and what was it, if you remember?
I think one of the first photo books for me, which really implanted in my head when I was a student, a photography student in the 90s, was the work by the exit programs and Christine Perkins, and they were doing all the sort of the books, the projects on inner city, suburban Britain, and the exit guide, which I've actually reviewed on the channel, was sort of quite a significant sort of book in my head, which when I was at uni, I sort of related to it a lot because I come from a very working class background. But I think it wasn't so much books for me because I think in the 90s, books was a precious commodity. Books were quite expensive. Books weren't, for me at the time, very accessible. And I was just starting to understand the process of photography in books. And I think for me, it was more galleries. And where I come from in the north of England, there was a gallery called the Side Gallery, which I think everybody universally will have heard of at some point with photography. And that was a sort of hub for me in terms of being able to see photography from the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the exit program, the exit survival book, and the side gallery for me were two significant things, which was opening my world up to photography early on.
Okay, so it was a kind of education without having to go very far and.
Exactly. We were very lucky in the northeast of
Mhm.
England, and I lived in Newcastle as a student. We were very lucky that we had such an amazing gallery and some amazing people who were still around doing stuff.
Okay.
Uh, you know, we were very privileged to have that.
So between the 90s and when you did your first video review of a book, how did you get there? How did you start the channel?
It started a little bit in the late 80s when I was in my teens, and I sort of picked it up through a friend of photography, and weirdly, I just started putting stuff together. I had no idea what I was doing, and I actually started making money out of it. You know, within 3 months of picking up a camera and understanding the processes that I understood, I just started making money, and I couldn't quite fathom it out. And I spent a long time teaching myself darkroom. I was in the darkroom for most my late teens and most of my 20s, learning to print, learning to sort of develop my projects and stuff. I went from there I applied to university because a friend of mine applied, and a sort of university became a sort of apparent that I could do something with what I was doing, but at an educational level. You've got to remember, I come from a very working class background in the north of England, and mining or being in a soldier in the army were sort of really some of the two options you had when you were growing up there. So I went to university in Newcastle, and I had a really great tutor called John Kippen,
Mm-hmm.
and the late Chris Wainwright, who sadly passed away a few years ago. But John Kippen really anchored me, and his words, it was just wisdom, and the way he was methodical in his approach, and pure chance, absolute fluke. I met John Easterby, who was at Magnum at the time, and we got on, and we had a common love of football, and we talked for a long time about football. And he invited me down to come and work at Magnum as an intern.
Wow.
So I said I couldn't because I was going off to Russia for a while to do a project for my course, and then I did. And then when I came back, I rang him and I said, look, can I come down and do the intern at Magnum? And I had no real, I knew Henry Cartier-Bresson, I knew Kappa, I knew all of the people, but I knew one photographer who I'd been looking at was Peter Marlowe. And so I went down, I worked in the library for a week or 2 weeks, and then I met this guy who walked in and said, can you break into buildings? And I was like, yeah, what do you want me to do? He said, well, can you break into that building over there? So that was Peter Marlowe. And what he was doing was, there was a derelict building next door to the Magnum office, and we broke into it and set up a dark room and a massive drying area so he could print and hang all his Liverpool book project, which became his book. So I did that. And then I said I didn't want to work in the library anymore. And I become friends with all these photographers. I was just like hanging out with them all. And like people were walking through, Larry Towers, Gardo, Elliot Irwitt, even met Henry Cartier-Bresson in Bath. Not in the Bath, but in Bath
Yeah.
in England. So I was surrounded by all these people. And then I did my sort of 2 months or whatever it was, 6 weeks. And I've been just hanging out with Peter and doing stuff with him. And then I left, went to uni, and I went away traveling after uni to Romania. And then I rang Peter when I got back at Stansted Airport and said, oh, can I come and work with you? And he went, yeah, come on. So I ended up becoming Peter Marlowe's assistant in London. But at the same time, I was working on a building site. And then I started working with Ian Berry, and I was going out with Stuart Franklin, Chris Steele Perkins, actually. And that was a really interesting meeting somebody who was really influential to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just an amazing experience. And I was an assistant to about 4 or 5 photographers, Ian Berry for a long time, I went around the world with Philip Jones Griffiths a few times, Bert Glynn. It was just a privilege, you know. And then I sort of moved into my own freelance world, away from assisting, and then I was just making money, you know. I was working. I met some amazing people, joined a little agency. We were really kicking it in London, and
And this is all documentary work, right?
no, this is going up to around 2001,
Uh-huh.
and this was the progression and the trans, like how I moved up, the transition of moving over from assistant, and I was making a lot of work, you know. I worked a lot, and until about 2007, I always collected books through this. I always bought books, and I had money, and I was, you know, I'd pick up books and stuff. And then about 2007, around 2007, 2008, I'd won lots of awards. I'd traveled the world. I'd just done some amazing things, but it was a sort of, two things were really significant. One was the digital age was taking hold, and budgets and production costs and everything was becoming scrimped. It was becoming stripped. And as you were aware, the economic crash was around 2008. And I fell out in love. I just fell out of love with the industry. I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Well,
I'd spent 20 years working at it, and all of a sudden the romance had gone. So I sort of backed off from it and went and worked in a factory.
wow.
And I just stopped, and I was taking pictures now and then. I'd do the odd job, an odd shoot, but in reality, I was working in a factory. I just changed, and I was working in a friend's factory, and I loved it. I really loved it. I loved the long hours, the factory life, the banter, the boys. It was brilliant. And
That is a really crazy trajectory. Okay, this is.
oh yeah, but it was a real leveler. But I don't need much to be leveled out. I am pretty leveled out as it is, and I've never had any airs or graces. I've always just been me and respected who I was around. So just when I was sort of picking up lots of awards and doing stuff, I just thought, nah, this is not for me. I'm sick of quibbling over money. I'm sick of trying to justify my costs and justify this, and I just can't be bothered. You know what? I just want to have a rest. And I just kept taking pictures, and I put big projects behind my book, which is out now. I just put it in the filing cabinet and left it. Lots of stuff. And then I started sort of taking pictures again after about 2 years. And then I thought, well, you know, I want to get back into it. What do I do? What do I feel as I want to do? And I thought, I want to teach. And the reason I wanted to teach was because I wanted to, one, put something back to grassroots. I was always interested in grassroots. I was always interested at where it starts, the raw material. Mm-hmm. How do you work with that? And I was very lucky. I met an amazing guy in an interview when I was putting a pitch forward to do some teaching, and he sort of took me aside and said, "You're not going to get this because we're after maths teachers. We're not after what you want to do, but there's an opening coming up soon somewhere, and you're perfect because you're industry and you've got knowledge, and that's what we're doing." So I literally went for the interview, and I met an amazing group of people. Guy called Jez, who interviewed me, still a great mate of mine, and I got the job out of the blue, and it was a real, like, wow. But what teaching gave me, I love teaching. I absolutely love being with the raw material. I love being with 16-year-old girls and guys who are just starting out, who are just trying to find a way. Mm-hmm. And I love it because they can just, it's about self-discovery photography, you know, and if I can just set the foundations right, because I have to tell them it's about them, you know, it's about them, it's about nothing else. It's about how you see the world. And also, I teach a lot of older students as well. And then I sort of then thought, well, if I teach and I've got an income, then I can just work on my work when I want, and which I do, which I've been more prolific in terms of projects and establishing myself the way I want to do it since then. And it's amazing. It's a real two-handed affair. I can teach, which I love, and I can just concentrate on me. And then what I realized in the middle of that was when I was with these students of all ages, I realized none of them read books.
Mm-hmm.
None of them. And I thought, this is crazy, because as you're aware, and I'm sure any listeners are aware, that the whole publishing industry changed with digital, and we're all now become our own bosses. Now we dictate our industry. We are part of each individual process. We can promote our books. We don't have to beg a publisher to publish a book. Some still do. I was lucky, I did, and but now I can publish, and lots of friends, Kickstarter, and all of this sort of helps facilitate it. And I'm thinking, photography books are so important because, and how can you're missing out on so much stuff. The 17-year-old boy who I'm teaching has never read a photography book, but they pick stuff up on the internet. And I'm like, I need to do something about this. So that's how CAMERA started. That's how it was born. And I just rather haphazardly started putting these videos together. And yeah, I just sort of going through what I had, any memorabilia, my work, the work of others. And that's how it all began, really.
So tell me, the main question is, so why do you think that the photo books are so important? You know, the internet is full of great projects. There is web documentaries. There's all kinds of variety. Why does a paper book matter?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think for the photographer, a sense of achievement. I think in a lot of ways, I think with the digital age, if you can remember, if you go back a few years, when we had all our vinyl and we had all our DVDs and CDs, and then digital took over and everybody was throwing out their CDs, everybody was throwing out their vinyl, everybody was throwing out. And all of a sudden, it's become a trendy again to have vinyl. And I think it's the same with photography, because all of a sudden we become digital and everything's in this little square box, rectangle box in front of us. We can't touch it. We can't feel it. So the book gives you a sense of ownership in producing it, but also in owning it. It makes you almost like you're touching the photographer, like you're feeling part of them, but you can use it and feel it to your own desire. You can spend a long time looking at it. You can read it differently, different days. So I think the photography book gives you that, it gives you that full three-dimensional feel. It makes it real.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me it does, absolutely. I'm just trying, I mean, I absolutely value photography books. I feel like the historic value of, in 20, 30, 40 years time, when technology, formats, screens change, but there'll be a book you can experience in the same way as we did 100 years ago, and will into 100 years in the future. So I definitely agree. There's so many different ways to appreciate a book, but I'm just trying to collect opinions or experiences from other people. So
absolutely. I think in 15 years ago, books were accessible, but books were expensive. Getting a book published was very difficult to a lot of people. But now, because of digital, because of YouTube, because of Twitter, because of social media, and publishing costs, and it's a massive industry now, and you don't have to go through the channels of trying to sacrifice your soul to get a book published. And I think it's great that lots of people are publishing books, because we all have individual tastes. We go with what we want to go with, and I think it's great, and I think it's an amazing time to be in for photographers and for visual artists and whatever you want to call them, to be able to just, however simple, however complicated, be able to just put their voice out and give it to people and say, here you are, here's a physical commodity of what I want to do. And it's still quite tricky to publish stuff in terms of costs and things, but if you can do it and manage it and actually find ways to publish your work, then it's amazing. And I think it's a great time. And I think with me, with the CAMERA channel, I'm learning oh God, I learned so much. Every time I pick up a book, I've looked at these books and I keep learning and learning and learning and learning every time I talk about it. Every time I open a page, it doesn't matter whether you've looked at the book 10 times. You look at it for the 11th time and you just pick something totally different. And that's why I love doing the CAMERA channel. That's why I think books are important.
Okay. And what would you say, so you mentioned one thing, you said that there is a lot more self-publishing going on because that's accessible now. What other kind of trends would you say, let's say, that was more visible in the books that you were reviewing 10 years ago versus today? Are there clear trends in terms of who's publishing or what kind of subjects are being published or anything that you've observed?
In the last 10 years?
Yeah, let's say from, when you started doing the channel and then what kind of changes might have happened?
In terms of subject matter, what's appearing now?
Publishing, yeah, I mean, maybe the size or whatever it is. I mean, like, have you noticed any big changes?
I think we're learning a lot about life. I think we're learning a lot about the way people see themselves, and I think that's been hidden for a long time in terms of photography books. And if you look at this set I've got here, there's life's works here. This book here, Mick Crutchlow, Coal Town, he's been documenting his local community for 40 odd years. This is him in his hometown. This is Tish Murtha, who was documenting a period of time in the 80s and 90s. Stuff we would never get to see maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. And Martin Anderson's view on Tottenham football fans. This is a beautiful book. This is a work of art, out of order. I'm in love with this book. And this is an insight to a sort of cultural aspect of life, which you and I may never see. Some people might never see. And I think it's helped evolve and us understand history more. It's helped us, a lot of books are, like the Coalface, and even this in a few years is quite historical. And then there's Barry Lewis's Butlins. I think, and I'm not promoting these, I'm just, I'm showing you and trying to answer the question in terms of what have I seen. I think it's quite autobiographical. I think we're looking at history, because the periods we're looking at with some of these, it was very prolific. A lot of it's on film as well, but it was a very prolific period for photography. Now it's become more, and it's going to be interesting that in another 10 years, what we're getting in our books, what we're getting, what we're seeing, how much further can we dig in? Will always be room for history. And it's quite an interesting concept,
And in terms of the channel, so you said that having started doing these book reviews, you've been able to learn a lot yourself just by looking and re-looking at the books. But has something else changed in your life since you started doing it? Some interesting people contacted you, or
yeah, my bank balance has gone down a lot.
But your walls are being covered in beautiful books, so
What has changed? Do you know, I haven't got enough wall space. They're in boxes, most of them. Well, this little selection here is the next batch I'm going to do, and I keep them boxed until I do them, and then I put them somewhere else. So this is my next sets of books, which I'm going to do, and I think, being a photographer and being a teacher, and it's understanding trying to understand what it's all about, and it's all about learning, and what I'm getting from the reviews, what I'm understanding. I'm just learning. I'm understanding the craft as much as I can, and I'm not saying I understand it. I'm learning. A great example, if you can understand my process, is this book. This is from a young boy Richard James Palmer up in the Northeast, and he's just been documenting his local community up in the North. And how would I have got to see this if had he not have done that? So he throws me something like this, and I think this is wonderful, and it's making me rich in knowledge, and it's making me more informed to try and put it into perspective with students, with my peers. But to pinpoint your question, my work's improved. The way I shoot, the way I think, the way I look at stuff. It's given me, I'm inspired all the time.
Right.
You know, it's helped my photography itself. You know, everything I'm trying to sort of show the students when I talk to them and when I'm talking about other photographers' work, the minute I put a camera to my eye, I'm on, you know, I always have been, but I think I'm much more rounded now in terms of what I want to say and what I want to look at. If that makes any sense.
Okay. And in terms of the books, on a more practical level, if somebody would like to get their book reviewed with you, how does that happen? They send you a copy, or? Yeah,
I mean, you can the email. You can get in touch with me through Twitter or Facebook. Sorry, Twitter. I have it on Facebook, but I don't really. I just sort of use it to add stuff on. Instagram. Yeah, just sign me out and ask. You know, just ask me what the book's about. It's a bit of a longer process because over the COVID, I've taken 3 months out because one, my family, one, getting my students all finished. I was sick for a little bit, but secondly, I was working on a project all the way through it, and I've sort of come out of that. So I've got, as you can see, I've got a bit of a backlog,
right.
And there's 2 boxes. It's not just one. So if people can be patient. By all means, send me the book. I will try my best to get something out there. And, you know, I can do about 3 a week at the minute. And so, yeah, just get in touch and I'll give you an address to send it to. And if you could just be patient, I'd love to have a look. Sure. Also, you know, I'm happy, with time allowing, to review stuff online and have a look, you know, and have a chat and stuff like that if I can. As you can see, I do talk a lot.
Yeah, so that's great.
The camera channel is a perfect excuse to me to talk all the time.
Nice. Well, that's really useful if you're a teacher. You know, you don't want to be a quiet one. That's great. And you don't have any special criteria for the type of books you review? I mean, my question mainly is it only for documentary work, or are you willing to look at everything else, commercial, portrait?
I think I'm open for anything. I think when you're giving me your book, you have to be honest. You have to be honest and open about constructive criticism. But I can tell you, I've not set up camera to be critical.
Right.
And none of my work, none of the reviews are critical. Sometimes I criticize the design of books. Sometimes I think the designers are taking over and I don't like the way it's been laid out and stuff. But in terms of the photography, I try to see a positive and stuff which is quite difficult to sort of review in a sense. I can try and showcase it and do a sort of smaller showcase to sort of, I've done a few zines where I've just sort of showcased it, and I have had one zine sent to me which I didn't know what I could say about it. It didn't sort of lead me anywhere. It didn't sort of take me anywhere. If you're going to send me something, give it something challenging. Give me something which is where you're taking the project, you know. And I'd like to know how you shot it, and I'd like to know what you shot it on, and you know, I'd like to challenge you a little bit, but I won't be critical in terms of negativity. The camera's not about being negative. It's about embracing photography.
That's super useful feedback, I think, for any creator. I mean, that's the other value of a photography book, is that other people can look at it and maybe help develop a deeper process and a deeper understanding of your own work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first started off camera, I didn't used to show all the pictures in the book because I was always scared that if you saw all the pictures, you wouldn't buy the book.
Right.
But I've begun to realize that's not the issue, because if you want the book, you got to get it.
Right.
And what I, you know, one of the reasons as well, I sort of looked at the way other people are looking at photography books, and nobody talks. They open photography books and they don't speak. they just open the pages, and I'm like, I understand that from a publisher's side where they just want you to look at it, and I get that. But when you're sort of you're getting 17,000 views on your YouTube channel, and all you're doing is opening your book, and you're not doing anything. Oh, the minute you open the page, you need to shout at it. You need to talk about it. You need to,
Right.
you know, doesn't matter. You don't have to be an expert. Just tell us what you think, and that's the concept, really.
Right.
So.
That's, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a cool your Twitter account. I've been following it for a long time, so it's very nice content.
Thank you. It's getting better. My production methods are getting better.
Of course,
I'm learning. I'm getting much better at putting them together.
Of course.
At first, I used to just do them in my classroom. I used to just go blah, 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 boom, put it online, and I'd look at it later and go, oh my God, I didn't say that. But I'd already had 100 views, so I thought I'll just leave it. I'm getting better. I've got a lot of things planned for CAMERA. You know, I want to take it to other stages. It'll always be a book review, but
Right.
I want to do other things with it as well.
Nice. Okay.
Help communities and stuff.
Okay, that's so I mean that basically answers most of my questions. Anyway, this is our first run, so I just wanted to see where it.
Thank you.
But I wanted to ask the people who are online if they have any questions. Perhaps if you can wait for another minute or two, if there are questions about photo books, about documentary photography, about whatever it is you're interested in.
Yeah.
If there's any questions, we're happy to answer.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Or otherwise, yeah, I'm going to repost this live video in our stories, and I will tag you so people can go and, you know.
Yeah, people can just drop us a message, and I'll try my best. I get some lovely emails off people. I really do. It's really shocked me, to be honest, how people getting in touch with me, just saying, especially when I had this 3 months away from it, where people email and say, where are you? What are you doing? You've literally you've changed the way I see photography. And I'm like, what?
Great.
I'm like, what? How can I do that? I'm just telling you how I see it. And it's beautiful. It really is. It actually makes me really happy. And I've never done it for that. You know, and it actually was really nice that people have emailed me and said these nice things, you know, so it's really good.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's what happens when people discover the world of photography. I got into photography through books as well, so I'm with you on on absolute love for them.
It's so personal, isn't it? You can take it to bed with you. You can take it to put it in your bag and go out.
Yeah.
You can go away for the weekend and you just put that book in there, because you're sort of looking, I think, with certain things for inspiration all the time, aren't you? You're looking to think, well, how can I learn from that and mirror that in my output?
Right. Yeah. And
it's a very sort of, you know, you feel attached to it, you know, and I'm devastated if I drop a book. I'm like, what have I done? What have I done?
Right. It's a creation of love and energy, and
it is, yeah, it is, and I think that's the realism of having books, and it just gives the photographer some power. And gives them some way of saying, this is what I can do.
Right.
Because you've got to publish it. You've got to get the money to publish it, and you've got to do all the work. Then you've got to edit it. But actually, you can, once somebody's got it in their possession, you've got a bit of the photographer there with you. You know, especially if you've got a limited edition book of 500. You know, it's good. I think that the thing we've got to watch in the future, I've seen a lot of books which I'd go, I'd really like to review that, or I'd really like to buy that, whatever. And it's just too much money. And I think we've got to be careful of that. And I think Blue Coat Press is a really great example of affordable, amazing books. If you look at this, you know, this book, look at the size of it. Look at that. £25. Wow. £25, which is about 28 euros or something like that. I'm not sure. And then I see books for 60, 40 euros. And I'm like, really? Obviously, certain things go into it where, you know, they all might be hand printed inside, and I get that. And they might be hand stitched or whatever, and I get that. But I think we do have to be careful on how things are priced and how we, you know, we don't outprice ourselves from the
Yeah.
market, because it's all about, you know, it's not about trying to make money in the long term from it, you know, because a lot of books won't double, treble in value over time. It's about selling your stock and getting your message out there. And you know, if you're overpricing yourself, then you're not going to get it out there as much, you know, and you don't need to do that.
That's actually an interesting conversation that maybe we could have another time, because I guess
Absolutely.
the whole self publishing industry is far more expensive than if you're doing bigger runs, and that's a different.
Yeah, it is, and I think, and I've done a Kickstarter
Uh-huh.
and I was successful with it, thankfully, and I can, you know, I think it was very difficult. And I've got a new book coming out next year. It's going to be not Kickstarted. It's going to be something like Unbound or something, because I think like the month you've got to get your Kickstarter out is not enough time. Maybe for somebody like Blue Coat Press it is, but because they've got like a massive back following and people trust their brand and their name. But I think for somebody like myself on my own, I need a bit more time to promote it. But what's more important when I'm looking at setting it up is not to outprice myself in terms of how much I want to cost, because I just want to put a book out for £15 or whatever, no more than £20, because that's about right, you know. I don't want to charge £40 for my book.
Yeah.
It's just, I want people to buy it.
This is super important. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really good advice. You know, crowdfunding and do it long term rather than fast and furious. And yeah, try to price reasonably. That's useful.
Cool. Thank you.
We didn't have any questions, but we got lots of thank yous. So thank you so much for joining us. And
oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
I'm really happy to chat with you. And we'll stay in touch. Maybe we'll send you a few of our magazines, but don't be hard on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. I love stuff. Yeah, anything. I'd love to have a look at it. Thank you very much.
Nice evening. Thank you.
Pleasure. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.